Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Let me tell you a little bit about Aingeal Rose, who's joining us today. Aingeal Rose is an author, and she has been doing this type of work. And when I say this type of work, I mean the great work of being a light worker, of teaching humanity and raising the vibration of humanity. She's been doing this for 40 years. She has had numerous certifications and everything from Reiki to psychic laser therapy, hypnotherapy, past life regression, and so much more. She's been doing private Akashic readings for the past 15 years, and you'll see much of that work in the books that she has published. Her new book is called The Nature of Reality. Is that correct, I hope?
That's correct.
Right on. So anyway, so without further ado, I want to welcome back Aingeal Rose. Welcome back to the show today, Aingeal. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thanks for having me on again. It's always good to talk to you, Bernard.
Yes, it always is a pleasure for us, too, as well. Thank you. And the reason why I stumbled is I moved recently, and they sent me your book, but it went somewhere else. So I'm like, well, I still haven't gotten the book yet. Like,
it's in another reality.
Yeah, it's probably sitting in the address forwarding section of the post office. But
oh well.
So I don't have it in front of me. I'm so sorry. This is probably the first time that I haven't had the opportunity to go through the book before interviewing somebody on the show. But if it's anything like your first book, which I will say I was very much enamored by. I think it was probably one of the first books by that particular the marketing people had sent me that I really was riveted. So I'm sure it's probably very similar.
It's better, Bernard.
Oh, great. Very, very good.
Okay.
So you've been away for quite a while, and we were just talking a little bit about this, that you weren't really doing any shows over the summer because you were in lovely Ireland. And why don't we start off by telling us a little bit about your trip in Ireland? Why did you go over there, and some of the experiences that you had while you were there?
All right. Well, my beloved Ahanu is Irish, as you might know, and
yes.
If he doesn't get home periodically, he goes down the tubes, let's say. He really needs to go home, and I mean that literally because the land there, for anyone who's been to Ireland probably knows, the land there is very different. It's got a particular type of energy that is very old and alive. So he needs a recharge periodically, and we hadn't gotten back in over a year and a half because we had moved to San Diego, so it was farther and it cost more and all this and that, So we planned some classes, and people were just ready for us to be back, okay? But it was one of those trips that was all pre-arranged by Spirit, because you could tell when I got on the airplane from Boston to Dublin, this energy came over me, and I just thought, okay, I don't know what's going to happen here, but this is special. So the place where we were staying, we stayed in a lovely cottage, and it had a standing stone on the property. And for people
Nice.
who don't know, Ireland is full of these big, tall stones, all right, that are about 5,000 years old. So the morning after we were there, we heard the stone calling us, come out here, okay? So we went out, and sure enough, it turned out that it was a very feminine presence. And it told me to pay attention to the aquifers under the ground. Well, I didn't quite know what that meant, but to make a long story short, it ended up taking us on these guided journeys to all these strange sacred hills and off the beaten path caves and places that you wouldn't find on a normal tourist map.
Wow.
And it was having us make these mother tinctures with jars of water from all these different sacred places. And like I say, a lot of them were very surprised to us, because one of them was called the Hill of Anya. And the rumor was an old ancient goddess actually was buried on top of this hill, and she was also called the Queen of the Fairies.
Oh.
Now, yeah, and it turned out that this whole area of Loch Gur was dedicated to her. There was a lake there called the Lake of Enchantment. There was a stone circle in the area that had 133 standing stones in it. The place was just loaded with this really old energy. But what was happening was we were being asked to create these waters from these different places, and we would just let the spirit of the land that had the original history come into the jar as much as wanted to, and
right.
You'd know when it came in. You'd feel it come in. You'd put the lid on. Didn't know what we were going to do with them, but what happened was they wanted an assembly. It sounds so funny, but every single place was a being in and of itself. So we collected like 30 with the time that we had there, and they all wanted me to place them all together on a table so they could all communicate with each other. And what was so strange about it was they were letting us know that a lot of the original energies that had connected all these places had been broken or disrupted through historical events, and they wanted a chance to come back together to create a new imprint. And it was the most powerful thing, because then we started ingesting them. You know, we would take one jar from one place, we'd put some drops in a glass of water, and we'd drink it, and every single place just blew us away.
Nice.
It was kind of like being stoned times 20,
right.
You know. All right. But the point is I have yet to go into the records with each individual jar and decode the original history, which is the second part of what I wanted. And it's turning out to be a worldwide project. They also wanted us to go to the Bucarat mountain area of France and collect water there, because that has a really ancient history as well, some related to Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and also some ET activity. We didn't get to go this time. It's definitely on the plan next time, but we've already been led to a few places in America. So this has become quite a huge, really ancient Earth project, actually,
nice.
As well as piecing together missing pieces of history. But they're wanting me to do it through the waterways. So I find this, quite interesting. So that's a lot of what we did when we weren't teaching. Met wonderful people and places that were sealed that they wouldn't allow people into. We'd be walking toward the area, and all of a sudden somebody who worked for the government would be there, and they'd come up to us, not knowing who the heck we were, and said, "Do you want us to let you in there?"
Oh, right.
So doors were just being opened so that we could collect these waters. And, we have a very special way of doing it in terms of inviting the presence in. So that's what we're doing. Unfortunately, I couldn't ship any home to America because they don't let you ship water from,
right.
At least the Postal Service doesn't anyway, from one country to the other. So they're still in Ireland being caretaken. So that's what we were doing, Bernard.
That sounds very, very nice, Aingeal. And I'm sitting here and listening to your story, and I can't help but think let me just share with you this. I think you will appreciate this very much. Last week we had somebody else on from Ireland, and the topic was the Tuatha De Danann and the fairy folk.
Right.
And I'm just sitting here thinking how kismetic this is that I deal with like 2 or 3 different PR people, and the 2 different PR companies gave me 2 guests with Ireland topics back to back. So I love that.
Yeah, even one, that 2 episodes on, that whole culture was quite prominent in even a lot of the places that we went. You trace it back to the history of those people and a lot of the goddess energy. And what's ironic for me is that in my whole years of spirituality, I've not really gotten into goddess energy too much. And so it was bringing me back to a lot of my old memories of Ireland as a female presence there of years and years ago. It was quite interesting. It wasn't just for me. It was to reconnect a lot of things. And we would go to holy wells as well that we were guided to. And, some were tainted. Some had been compromised. Yeah. Others were perfectly pristine with powerful healing energy. So we found that even some of the places where we went to get water, once we got there and you felt that they were compromised, I actually hesitated. There was one particular hill, I forgot what it was called, the Hill of the Skulls. I think it's in, I can't even remember where. Okay, but years ago, we had gone to this hill, Hanuanai, and it was full of enchantment. I mean, you walked on this hill, and the energy was awesome. But this time when we went, the energy was dead. And I was like, wow, so I wasn't going to take the water. Right. And then all of a sudden the trees begged me to please make a water essence because they needed resurrection. Oh. And so it was interesting. Yeah, it was quite interesting, the things that we found out from being in different places just by being there, But we did get the Hill of Tara. We got Newgrange. We've got some of the more popular ones as well. But when they all come together and you sit down and you just listen to them talk to each other, it's pretty amazing,
It's wonderful. And what were some of the messages that you received, if you could elaborate a little bit? Was it, you were talking about reconstructing the energy, the power, the grid? I mean, what was kind of the whole...
Well, they wanted a remapping. And the thing, and I understand now why they wanted me to pay attention to the aquifers, because all those underground water systems all connect to each other across the planet. And water holds memory.
Yeah.
So, if there are places where the water's distorted or the memory is lost, part of what they were wanting to do by coming back together is recreate the original information back into the waterways of the planet. And they said they wanted the return of the swan. And I thought that was interesting because if you look up the swan, I mean, there's people who believe that the pyramids and Newgrange and some of those sacred sites were aligned back in that time period to the constellation Cygnus, which is the swan in the heavens, okay? And they believed that there was an actual gateway through Cygnus that led to other parts of the universe. So I felt like they were, plus the swan itself is a symbol of purity and innocence, and basically, when we're in our right minds, Bernard, when we're supposed to be cooperating with each other and being harmless in our intention, that was part of that original energy. So not only were they wanting to remap an actual electromagnetic grid on the surface that carried that original memory, they wanted it through the waterways, which is why they were having me collect water with the essence in it rather than, just go sit on the hill, for example, and take notes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I actually had to create water that had the original imprint in it so that they could restore that. And when I say restore, I'm not really talking that they're going to go back to exactly the old ways, but they're going back to the original memory of, basically Source's intention for life, which is a pristine template where, we thrive from it. We don't digress, So that's part of the job. And, I have a feeling I'm going to be taken in a lot of different places to do this. And the more you collect and the more of them you bring together, like I say, even putting 2 drops of one little essence into a glass of water and drinking it, you get this whole experience of what that was like originally. So,
oh, that sounds just absolutely amazing. And it's very interesting because I think it was actually, let me see, I can pull it up right here. This past summer, back in June, there was a reservoir of water, an ocean of water discovered beneath the Earth's surface. And it's supposed to be 3 times the volume of all the oceans put together.
I heard of that.
And I find that so very interesting about, here we have this like massive ocean of water in the middle of the Earth. And now these waters called out to you to bring back this pristine, or this natural source aligned energy to it. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yes, and there's times too, when I'm in the records, and it depends on the question that person is asking of source. But sometimes you find yourself in different dimensional levels where the waters are different. You actually feel them. They have different. They're still water, but they have different qualities to them. And when I heard that about the waters under the oceans, I did wonder too, when we have our history of floods, is it really that there's earth changes going on the surface, and there's collapses of land masses, and this other water from underneath comes up, rather than we get rained on from the sky,
Right, okay.
So I was thinking of how things are submerged. Because in Ireland there's a whole area called the Burren, and it's just nothing but barren rock, and the most gorgeous orchids grow out of it that are only in one other location in the world. But the history is that that whole area was once underwater. So it's quite fascinating when you look at land masses that are gigantic, that there's evidence that they were all under the sea. And that also happened to me when I lived in New Mexico. I lived an hour south of Albuquerque, and that soil was full of seashells.
Wow.
Yeah, so that whole area also had once been underwater. In fact, I'd get these flashes of tropical trees in that area and thinking, what am I remembering,
That's very interesting. I'm looking at the article right now, and one of the quotes says that some geologists believe that this water arrived in comets as they struck the planet, and how this supports the alternative idea that the oceans gradually oozed out of the interior of the early Earth.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what you just said, yes.
Yeah, I think that might have been more the way it was, because even now, look at all the sinkholes that are appearing everywhere, right?
Yeah.
There's obviously some collapse happening of the land, And then you wonder, okay, the land's collapsing, what's going to emerge out of it as it sinks down in places? Because I'm always shown, we just checked again last Sunday, just a few days ago, and we're still in for a lot of earth changes yet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we're just in the beginning phases at this point. We're going through a rebirth, which means I don't know what it means, but I'm definitely not going to buy a new home in a new subdivision.
Yeah,
I think I would trust an old home in an old neighborhood like where I live right now.
That's for sure. I did see recently, though, again, 2 days ago, that there was some sort of an energetic overlay on the Earth that I've never seen before. And it did look like some other, so hard to explain it in regular language, but it looked like some new energy that looked like a definite overlay was merging with this existing one. And I've not seen that before.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so it felt very positive.
Oh, I got to write that down because we have to go on a break, but I want to talk about that because I have been having some intense quote-unquote downloads in reference to the changing of the light working grid that we're working with right now, in reference to how we used to work with over the last 10, 20 years, the violet ray or the indigo colors and whatnot. But I've been seeing and I've been feeling, and actually I have been working with a different color, which was given to me last year, but I'm hearing more and more how this is becoming more prominent as far as overlaying it around the planet. I'm wondering, I don't want to reveal yet. We'll wait till after the commercial.
Okay.
But anyway, so Aingeal, before we go on break, why don't you share with everybody where they can find your book right now?
Okay. Well, of course, there's always Amazon and all great booksellers across the globe, but you can also order it from worldofempowerment.com.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio. We are speaking with Aingeal Rose today about her new book, The Nature of Reality, Akashic Guidance. But before we bring Aingeal back on the show, I just want to give everybody a heads up for next week. Make sure you join us next week on 11/11. We have a really, really incredible show. We are not only going to have one guest, we're going to have two guests. And our two guests next week will be Rupert Sheldrake and Father Matthew Fox. For those of you that are in the consciousness movement, I'm sure you've heard of both of them quite often. Rupert Sheldrake was the gentleman that was banned along with Graham Hancock from TED Talks. For talking about the science delusion, which is one of my favorite TED Talks. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you haven't, make sure you Google that and just get a chance to see some of Rupert Sheldrake's work. And then, of course, Matthew Fox was a Catholic priest who was excommunicated for being a heretic. My favorite kind of people, I'll tell you. And he's now an Episcopalian priest. They're much more liberal. But basically, he was speaking his truth and kind of questioning the church, which is not something you're supposed to do when you're an ordained priest of the actual church. But anyway, they put out a book recently, or actually it's coming out today maybe or next week, called The Physics of Angels, and that's going to be a very interesting talk with two very, very great minds. So make sure to tune in here to the Just Bernard Show next Tuesday on 11/11 for my talk with Rupert Sheldrake and Matthew Fox. It's going to be pretty awesome. But anyway, so before the break, Aingeal, we were talking about this overlay that was coming over, or that you were noticing that was coming over the Earth. And I don't know if we're using the same terminology. I don't know if it's whether it's a grid or what it is that you envisioned or that the message that you were given, but about a year and a half ago, and I love sharing this with my personal spiritual students about the change in frequency or color that I've been seeing, that I've been feeling, and I would say it was about a year or so ago, maybe a little less, where I was on this show, actually. It was very interesting. I believe I was on with Miriam Delicato, of all people, and we were talking about aligning with the Earth energy, or aligning with the grid of the Earth, et cetera, et cetera. This very similar conversation that we're having. And she asked me flat out, she goes, well, Bernard, what has your guidance been? I said, well, I'm feeling a golden ray, and I've been feeling that we need to now start spreading this golden energy around the Earth. And she's like, so not indigo, not violet. And I'm like, no, I'm feeling golden. And she said, it's very interesting. Several of the indigenous people she worked with was saying the same thing, and she's one of the spokespeople for the Hopi Nation. And so I found that to be very interesting, and I'm wondering I don't know if you get colors, or we all have our own way of connecting with source and information, but I wonder if that has anything to do with what you were talking about, this new overlay that's coming around the planet. Why don't you share with us a little bit of what you're getting with that?
Okay. Well, I first have to tell you that the grid that the waters were making in Ireland was gold.
Oh, my goodness, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
On top of the earth, that's what they were weaving, was this, it kind of looks like gossamer,
Yes.
Yeah, gossamer gold. Okay, the overlay I saw the other day, though, it does feel like a grid, but it wasn't necessarily gold, but it was a very light if you could imagine a blanket of this beautiful, very light aqua piece. And that's what I was watching merge right now. So that might not necessarily be the grid down close to the ground, because this actually felt like it was coming from the cosmos. Okay, kind of like a blanket, a beautiful, very light, aqua, peaceful blanket it was definitely a grid, but it was white light, and it was merging. Okay, so it doesn't negate the gold, because the gold looks like it is actually being woven on the earth itself across the globe as a template. But this felt like it was some shift that was happening on another level, but it was merging with the earth. And it just felt completely peaceful, completely loving and benign, and it was new. I've not ever seen that before. Okay, so I think we have both things going on.
Yeah. I love it. I don't know if you know, but the how do we say? I don't know if you want to call it the official colors, but the color that the G.I.C. website and all of our work is aligned with is like a blue aqua, and I love purple. Purple happens to be my favorite color, and one of our board members goes, "Well, why don't we change it to violet and purple?" I'm like, "No, it needs to be aqua."
Yes. Well, what's interesting is we're making a logo right now for our World of Empowerment site. We're changing things, and part of that is gold. Yeah, it has to be that metallic, shimmery gold. Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah, I've always been a violet person too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, me too. And I still use the violet flame, for purifying rooms.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Things like that, but. In terms of the grid, I've seen it more than once that it's meant to be a golden grid. Yeah.
Wonderful. And maybe that's what is meant by the ancients when they say coming upon the golden age,
Yeah, that could be.
Could be a part of it.
I think that frequency, though, is, obviously all you have to do is feel the difference when you picture a golden grid as opposed to any other color. I mean, that gold just has those electricals in it.
Yeah.
Which is what we need. We need those electricals to come down here.
Yeah, it's really funny when we're talking about color, and when you just said that, I kind of just did a quick test in my brain, and when I look at or I feel aqua makes me. I'm not aqua. I'm sorry, violet or purple. It is one of my favorite colors, and it makes me tingle and it makes me feel good. It makes me go ah, but. Yeah. For some reason, gold makes me want to smile. It makes me want to be joyful for some reason.
Yeah, I think it's the original paradise template. Paradise before it got all mucked up is what I'm really, when I say paradise, I'm referring to an original template of source that is based on bliss and happiness. And I really, from doing all these group Akashic Records, that's the intention of God. That's the will of God.
Right.
That's right, happiness. I just want to tell you, too, Bernard, that 11/11 is my birthday.
Oh, it is? How appropriate. You were birthed in a gateway on purpose, I'm sure.
I was. Yeah, a lot of people were. How many 11/11s of us are out there,
Absolutely. It's doing this type of work as well. Unbelievable.
Yes.
Well, I have to remember that and wish you a happy birthday during the show.
Well, it sounds like you're having a great show.
It's
okay. So yeah,
a lot of fun. Now we have a question in the chat room, and actually it was posted a little while ago, but I wanted to segue into it because I want to start talking a little bit more about the Akashic Records. And when you say the Akashic Records, can you explain what you're meaning when you say you're connecting with the Akashic Records?
Well, for me, the Akashic Records is really just a big database of creation. People call it a library, and some people believe that it's the record of each one of our soul journey since we've been created. But it's not limited to us humans. It's really the record of creation. Anything that's ever happened since creation began is basically recorded. Everything gets recorded. It gets imprinted. Another word for recording is imprinted into the ethers. So that means that all knowledge and information is available. So to me, that's what the records are. And when I tune into them. To me, you could read the Akashic Records in the cells of your body. You could read them in some river stones that you pick up. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's everywhere. It's imprinted everywhere. There's knowledge is everywhere. So for me, I kind of went up the normal ranks. You know, back in the day when I was a meditator, I was spontaneously in my own library, and I would be taken by my guides to experience a particular life for a particular reason. And it would happen a few times, but I couldn't get in myself. So I did what a lot of people do. I took a class. I learned a sacred prayer that got me in automatically. But I've since changed the prayer I was taught only because of things I've learned from Source.
Mm-hmm.
And what it just, that's what it is to me. It's a field of information. But what I find different about the Akashic field as opposed to a computer data bank, for example, is that the Akashic field is alive. It's very palatable. It contains every single sensory apparatus in it. It's filled with emotion. It's filled with understanding. It's filled with wisdom. It's filled with purpose. So it's a data bank of info, but it's information with a purpose. And that's why I love the records, because, you know, in a private reading, for example, when you do go in, you get to see a whole picture of a person. You get to see who they've been, how they're doing, what they're here for, how they're evolving, and every question is answered from that perspective. So it's the same thing, you know, when we started the groups, it was because people had so many questions about the earth and 2012, back when we started those, and healing and God and life after death and religions, that we just dedicated groups totally for that reason, and that's what the books are, really. So
wow.
Yeah, so that's my definition of it.
Well, I'm wrapping as I wrap my head around it. I can't help but feel, and I guess maybe perhaps I'm doing this from a linear logical standpoint, is it must be so much information because as a metaphysician, or maybe I should ask you this, as a metaphysician on a metaphysical level, is it fair to say that even our intentions are in the Akashic record, and the intentions that create a particular timeline in a particular dimension? Is it multidimensional? Is it that expansive that my linear logical mind is trying to tell me?
Well, it is expansive. And just to give you a small example, you know, when people have near-death experiences and they cross over and they say that they see their whole life flash in front of them, right?
Yeah.
It's a videotape, really. I mean, but that videotape is filled with every single minutest detail of their lives. I mean, things that the conscious mind doesn't even notice if it's walking by, you know, flowers in a field and it's thinking about something else, and it doesn't even know that it walked by flowers. When you see the review, the flowers are there. You know, nothing gets missed. But it's an experience as well of our relationship with everything else. In other words, when people do have a life review, they feel their effect on everybody and everything, and vice versa. Okay, so you really get it that you're in this relationship, but why I brought that up was because it records every single person and every single thing that you do and think and feel and behave as and say, and that's true across the board. It's true of the whole history of creation. The thing is, though, is that you can only downstep that info. A lot of it does depend on the condition of your brain, actually, and maybe we could have a conversation about the brain because it's in the book, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But it's consciousness dependent, it's awareness dependent, and it's brain dependent on what kind of information you can actually access. And even though it's all there for accessing, I even know my own limitations, you know, that I feel like I can't pick up information from certain things when people ask me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm very aware that that's the state of my own consciousness, my perceptual filters, and the state of my brain, you know? So, because the brain, we'll move into the brain if you're ready to.
Oh, by all means, let's do it.
Yeah, okay. You know, we had a topic one night, a group topic, evening that was specifically on the brain, and our intention was we were going to go in and ask Source to tell us all about the different lobes of the brain, right? But what happened when we went in there and I asked Source about the brain, it showed me a big sphere of light. It was hollow. It was just if you could imagine Glinda, you know, the Wizard of Oz, Glinda's ball that, you know, she comes floating down.
Yes, yeah.
Well, it was like that, except it was clear. It had a hint of golden particles in it, and I was seeing all of these firings go off everywhere in all multi-directions. And the brain said it did not want to be perceived as separate at all. It didn't want us to dissect any part of it. That the truth was it was a transmitter and receiver of information, okay? And it had no limit to what it could access. It could access anything non-locally anywhere in the universe. And what it does do, though, is for us as people, it takes, we're a spirit, right? Our original essence is we're an individuated spirit who has experiences. We observe, we think, we decide, we come to conclusions as a spirit. That those thoughts and decisions get sent into the mind field or the plasma field, or they get turned into concepts. The brain takes that and says, okay, I have to take this concept and translate it to hormones and chemicals, information down into this body. So it does that, and then the body follows suit, okay? All right, but the main thing Source was wanting us to know was that the brain, it has no limits. In other words, you can continually make higher and higher brain highways. You can develop brain highways through the whole course of your life. And the more highways you've got connected, the more higher mind information you can access. Let's put it that way, okay? All right, so I was a bit blown away by it because not only does the brain function as a transmitter of information and which turns things into chemicals and hormones, but it also has the ability to locate any information from the mind of God anywhere and bring it down to this level. But the reason we don't access it is because our brains are messed up with patterns and beliefs and perceptions and ideas of reality, so we put limits on how our brain gets formed, you know?
Right.
So I thought that was pretty interesting because I've always been somebody who, unfortunately I'm diabetic and I take medication, right?
Right.
And I'm very aware of how that medication can sometimes make me tired, okay? Over years of taking it. But in terms of anything else, I'm just somebody who's never, and I know a lot of people do, and I'm really not making a judgment, but I myself don't want anything in my body that alters my brain at all.
Right.
Okay? Yeah. And that's just me, but now, especially now that I know this, and for a while, Ahanu and I did this little program called Brain Highways that's really designed to develop more brain highways, and part of the program is you get down on the floor and you creep like you did when you were a baby, and then you crawl, and you wouldn't believe the coherence you get just from going back and doing that.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because creeping what creeping does is it takes the lower brain, that part of us that's reptilian and flight and fight, and it shrinks it in a way where it's not dominant anymore. And then it develops the midbrain, which is where all those higher crawling develops the midbrain, which is where all those higher centers are. And I never knew what coherence was. I just did that last year, and I thought of all these years I've been into spiritual stuff, and I never knew what an ordered brain felt like. Yeah, it was interesting.
Very nice. Wow. Very interesting. Now, does that have anything, or would that kind of overlap with what people are calling today neuroplasticity, creating new brain pathways?
It could be. I haven't studied that, but if that's what they're doing,
okay,
that's probably very similar. Mm-hmm.
Oh, very good. Very cool.
I think the point is that people have no idea what they can access. in terms of spiritual knowledge and information. You know,
Absolutely.
And we don't have ordered brains. You know, we're not coherent. Our fight and flight mechanism. I mean, we can see it in the world. It's really what makes us aggressive and fearful and defensive, and it causes wars and all of that, you know?
Yeah.
So it's definitely not an aspect of the higher mind, which goes right into divine order and cooperation and harmlessness. You know, those are all qualities of the higher brain.
Very much so. And it's funny now, we're going to have to take a break in just a moment, but one of the main things that I like to teach is that that the most important thing we have to do is to align with our higher self in order to get the infinite divine answers that are available to us. Like you were just saying, that it's all available to us in anything and everything. And I'm wondering how my definition of the higher self, if it kind of like relates to what you're referring to as the Akashic records or the Akashic mind. Is it fair to say that when we are in that state of aligning with our higher self beyond the ego into the infinite self, is that the Akashic record, or is that the vehicle to be able to contact the Akashic record?
Well, I would say it would be a level of personal development, actually, Bernard. You know, I mean, what's really happening is you're becoming your higher self.
Right, right.
You know, and as you become your higher self, you naturally are accessing higher knowledge. So, you know, I'm trying to avoid our tendency to make things separate.
Yeah.
So the thing is when you become your higher self more and more, and you integrate more and more of that, you are in that field of information. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe that all the answers are available to anybody. It's just a matter of tuning that radio in to that right frequency, you know.
That's right.
Very much so. We're going to be taking a break in just a moment, I believe. So let me just take this opportunity. Again, Aingeal, if you could share with us the name of your book and where people can find it.
Yes, my husband let me know the proper place to find it. It is at the natureofreality.info.
Natureofreality.info. Thank you very much. We'll be right back after this break.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Before we bring Aingeal back on the show, I just wanted to remind everybody that we do have a website that you can come visit for the Just Bernard Show and for all the work that I've been doing. I just recently finally purchased the domain name BernardAlvarez.com. And it's actually just a landing page on the Global Illumination Council website, but it does have links to everything that I've been doing for the last 10 years. So if you're interested in the work that I've been doing beyond this radio show, whether it be the YouTube classes, whether it be the books that I've written, whether it be newspaper articles I've appeared in, or the Collective Evolution documentary that I'm in, you can find all of that information at BernardAlvarez.com. Welcome back to the show, Aingeal. I want to jump right in with a big, heavy-duty question for the top of the hour. You named your book The Nature of Reality, and that's a big statement. What is the nature of reality? What did you mean by that?
All right. Well, you know what's interesting is that you pick a title and you even pick I go into the records and I pick ask source for the image of the cover, right?
Right.
And you haven't seen the book, but the original image is actually on the back cover. You know, we picked something else, for publicity reasons for the front, okay? But anyway, I never knew what it was about. It actually was a step pyramid, and it had the steps were pink and white crystal. It led up to a golden sun on the top. It had 2 silver balls on each side. And it wasn't until I was finished the book that I understood what the whole thing was about. So the nature of reality, according to source, right, is really it's really the potential for unlimited freedom and creation. But there is the process of becoming God-man. And us down here as humans in a human body, the journey is to literally become a God-man.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the whole book really addresses different aspects of reality, such as, what's time, what's dimensions, what's, like we just talked about, what's the brain, what are the chakras and the Kundalini. And through those questions, it was revealed, when we asked Source, what is your definition of the Kundalini? It came back and it said it's the path of courage.
Mm.
I thought that was a strange answer because it went on to explain that to become God-man, you go through a refinement process, a purification process.
Yeah.
Internally, not only in your consciousness, but biologically as well. And that the Kundalini is really the God force in the body, but it actually moves up through the chakras, and each chakra has, because we're dualistic, because we've had a little bit of genetic engineering going on in the history, okay?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We've got this dark and light thing going on within us, and it actually does express itself as, on the one hand, we've got life chemicals going on that, the body always works to repair itself, but on the other hand, we have a death urge, okay? And the original intention was never to die. I mean, death is not a natural phenomena in God's world,
right.
Okay? So, our job or our purpose or our reality is to realize our God nature. And that is, it calls it the path of courage with Kundalini because we go through these challenges and tests and trials, and we have to choose. We have to make decisions. We have to, what are you going to do? Are you going to develop a higher virtue, or are you going to fall back into something lesser? Because you just don't become God realized until you purify, the lower self
mm-hmm.
and move into higher and higher and higher states of love. Okay, you actually become an actualized God being. That's what we're all meant to be doing. And what I found amazing, Bernard, when I was bringing in this information is that how Source put the fail-safe in everything. For us, it is the Kundalini in our body. And if you never do anything with it, if it never starts that ascent, up through the chakras and becomes a virtuous being as it goes up through the different chakra systems, if you never do anything with it at its basic level, it's still the thing that allows reproduction, it allows the survival of the species, it runs the body. That's the Kundalini at its dormant basic function. But that has the potential, really to completely regenerate the human body, to take it into light. And you don't master a system until you can do that. All right, so the nature of reality is that we're meant to be God-men. That's really what it turns out to be.
Mm-hmm.
And in between that, Source delights in creation. It's basically saying, have a ball.
Yeah.
Have a ball. Do what you can. Be inventive. Be creative. I love it all. I see Source just delighting with what people can do, with the powers of creation that they have. So, and on one sense, reality, on one level, we can say we all make our own realities, actually, So there's...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but reality in a permanent term really is that it's eternal creation, and it can never be destroyed. It'll never be destroyed. No matter what anybody does, anywhere in the universe, you will never, ever, ever destroy the true reality, which is God's presence and God's powers of creation. So that's
very nice. Thank you.
The simplest way I can explain it, I guess.
I love it, and I love what you said about Source. It brought me to I'm sure many of our listeners, or maybe you even know the something called the Goddess Charge. As in the words of the Goddess Charge, it says that all acts of love and pleasure are my worship, and I was like, that's it. That's what you're saying.
Yes, that's right. That's right, and I think, we actually got about a year and a half ago, we opened up the records to a group, and we got a little bit of a lecture from Source right at the beginning, which never happens, by the way. But it was talking to us about mediocrity, and it was saying that it said that an event was coming that was of our own making because of our mediocrity. Okay, and that mediocrity was really the inability to love ourselves. So it went on to say that love holds very high standards. And what that means is that, if you truly loved yourself, you'd never say yes to anything that destroyed you or hurt you or, made you uncomfortable or, you wouldn't be choosing things like that. Yeah, because love is happiness. It's sharing and harmlessness. You'd always be making personal choices that reflected that as well. So it was kind of letting us know the degree of our inability to truly love in the way Source loves across the board, and bringing it back to our own personal selves obviously is sometimes the hardest thing to do.
It really is. It is. And speaking of the process, let's focus on the process right now for just a moment, because you were talking about the path of courage at Kundalini. And I couldn't help but think about, my own journey, my own path, and the journey and paths of those that I've assisted throughout the last couple of decades. And I don't know if I want to call it initiation, but, while there might be physical initiations that are involved, whether it be in Reiki or Wicca or something like that, or shamanism or whatnot, but the true initiation is that process of going beyond that which we've known in the past, or beyond the mediocrity of ourselves, quite honestly. And I got a very interesting question yesterday, and I answered it to the best of my ability, but now that I have you on the air, I'm going to ask you to help me with that answer. This woman is going through a personal initiation. She went through a physical initiation, and I always say, keep an eye out, because you did the physical process, but now the spiritual initiation is going to begin to take over. And she said, she asked me, she goes, why does it feel that my ideals and my idea of what reality is being shaken to the core? Is this a part of the process?
Definitely. Definitely. In fact, there's a chapter in the book called Time and Dimensions. Okay, and I'm going to use this answer because it will help give a visual.
Yeah.
But somebody was asking did time really speed up or slow down, okay? And Source said, no, time doesn't do that, but what it does is ripple. Okay, so it gave me an image of a carpet. You get a big rug and you go out and you shake it outside, It makes all those ripples. Okay, so this is what's going on now with the world. It's all being shaken. The carpet of time is being shaken. And that means that all those light strands that have held particular perceptions of time together for all these many thousands of years is all disassembling and reassembling. All right, so for ourselves personally, we have a light body around our bodies that actually creates the physical body. And if you were to look at it, it does look like an intersecting woven web of very fine light strands with these intersecting points. So for a lot of us, because of what's happening actually in the solar system, it's not just Earth, right? That the whole thing's being shaken up. All right, so it's shaking up our light bodies as well, which means that all of the patterns and beliefs and thoughts and perceptions that we have had for so long are all being disintegrated so that a higher version of truth can come in. So what she's going through is perfect. It's actually good news, okay? Because and I think the only time that's painful is when, somebody wants to hang on to their old perceptions, or, that in-between place before you've landed, before the new information has come in and settled itself. That in-between space can be very disorienting, and people get afraid, Yeah. So
absolutely.
That's my explanation of it. I think it's a great thing.
I do too. And And it seems that, back in my day, let's say, when I went through that process, unfortunately, we did not have the internet. We didn't have so many, and I mean, even even in a place like Little Old Roanoke, we have tons of spiritual centers and yoga centers and Reiki centers and meditation centers, and you didn't have that before. So, as for those that are going through the process, you don't need to, feel alone. You don't. We have the G.I.C.org. That's what the G.I.C. is all about. The Global Illumination Council is for those that are going through these types of processes to share that experience. So I will say that I had two of those processes, and one of them happened when I was very young. I talk about that in my book, but unfortunately, that kind of, if someone said to me, a very, how shall we say, a high degree magician said to me, "You got psychic whiplash," and this is like the first thing he ever said to me. He looks at me, he's like, "You have psychic whiplash," and I'm like, "What is he talking about?" He goes,
"Yeah, I never heard that one before."
He goes, "You got too many answers too fast, and now your psyche is broken." And I was like, "Wow!" And it was true. I went through about 10 years of struggling with the information, and I don't even think I really got together till my mid-30s or my late 30s of that information I got in my early 20s. But I fear for those that get it too quickly without the support of a community or even a radio station, like this, or a radio show like this. So You're not alone out there if you're going through that type of a process. The awakening, the initiation is, I think it's become so massive on our planet right now. It seems to be.
Well, it is massive, and people are very disoriented. And they're suicidal. You get a lot of suicidal people. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of people call me, and they don't know what's happening to them. They feel like they're losing their minds. Okay, and that is one of the effects of coming undone, I will say. And I have to be careful here because I don't want people thinking that if that's happening to them, that we can automatically call them mentally ill, right? Because part of it is a process. And one of the things I try to say to people, like when their whole life that they've lived it thus far suddenly breaks down and it no longer applies, they'll call me and they'll say, "I don't know what my purpose is. I'm lost." And, sometimes Source will come in and say, "Make up a new one." And it sounds like a simple answer, but it's not, because this is exactly what's happening now. Okay, in other words, the old order is falling away. Everything we've relied on and depended upon on a lot of levels is disintegrating. So Source is basically saying, look, a new field is coming over now. It's a higher creative field. And if you could remake your life any way you wanted or give yourself a purpose, what would you do? What would you be? What would you like to be? And I think that is such an interesting answer, because it puts the power back to the person, first of all. And I can't count the times when, I've appealed to a higher source and saying, "Okay, help me with this." And sometimes I get this answer back that says, "Why are you using your powerful mind in this way?"
Mm-hmm.
It always kind of throws it back to me and says, "Hey, remember that you've got these creative abilities, and you can sit down with a pen and paper and write out your feelings and write out how you'd like it to be." And that does begin to take shape in the plasma field. That's what's happening all the time. I mean, we're always creating all the time, whether you're aware of it or not. So, that's one level of an answer. Sometimes, though, we've had friends who literally, they had to go get medication. They had to get something to stabilize themselves, and that's okay, too. I mean, to me, whatever level of solution that you can embrace that'll help you, do it. That's kind of the way I feel. I don't have any judgment about anything anyone does to get themselves back to a place where they feel balanced.
And I think that's very important, especially with the topic that we're discussing here right now, because there will be people who, like you said, become very depressed, become suicidal, or lean toward addictions. I went through my whole addiction thing in my 20s, and And it was almost as if, and as somebody who went through that, I can say it was almost as if I wanted to forget everything that I was shown. It was like, oh, now like the Matrix. Well, I took the red pill. I don't like it. Now that I have the truth, I don't want to know. I don't want to know it anymore. And there's no going back. There's no going back. Unfortunately, it's just a matter of, like you said, in no judgment, doing what it is you need to do to get through, and allow it to be. And I think that's the most important thing, because there comes a point, I notice, when you decide this is a part of me or this is not a part of me, and you do turn your back on the information. And I guess that's what people say, oh, there'll be those that are stuck in the third dimension or whatever with this awakening process. But to embrace the knowledge, to embrace it and let it be a part of you. And I have this debate with so many people, not all the time, but it's a very common debate within spiritual circles about embracing the shadow self, so to speak. And I'm one of these that, the information makes you feel uncomfortable, then just embrace being uncomfortable. If the information gives you anxiety, embrace the anxiety. The information makes you depressed, embrace being depressed. Let it just be a part of you so it does not control you. Allow it to assimilate, so to speak. And a lot of people, especially in spiritual circles, will be like, oh, you shouldn't feel, you need to be happy. You need to be grateful. You need to, if you're depressed, you're not on the right track. And I'm like, really? I've been depressed a lot, and I'm doing very well.
Yes. No, I actually agree with you. And I just want to comment really quickly about some of the reasons people get depressed, too, is, how you mentioned that, you had this download of info when you were younger, and someone told you that, you couldn't handle it all, right? Psychic backlash, I think, was the phrase you used.
Psychic whiplash, they said,
Psychic whiplash. Okay. Well, the truth is that, the nervous system does have to be able to digest higher frequency information. And I think a lot of people don't give the body its full dues in that regard, because, it will fry your adrenal glands. It will affect your nervous system. It will affect your brain chemistry. So we have to be compassionate for those people who are going through that difficulty. And sometimes, nutritional supplements do go a long way with helping people with that, because that is part of what helps the body integrate, is it needs those minerals and vitamins to anchor stuff, it needs those amino acids. So that's one level of help that's there as well. But I agree with you. I think resistance to what is probably the biggest, I'd like to use the word mind F, if you know what I mean. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, resistance does more to ruin people than anything else, because they're in these, I shouldn't be feeling this. I shouldn't. And I think that that's horrible, because, I went through, I had a partner some years back who committed suicide.
Yes, okay? I remember.
All right. Now, the thing is that was, let's say, 35 some odd years into my spiritual journey. Somebody could have, in fact, the lady across the street had come over to me and said, I can't believe he shot himself in front of you, and there must be really something deep there and all this stuff, right?
Right.
Okay, but the point is that it just because you're on a spiritual path doesn't mean you'll never go through tragedy or sorrow or depression. In fact, I think it's more about what you do to learn from it, or what you do to handle it,
Yes,
It's not about casting it out. In other words, I actually went back to our cabin 2 or 3 times afterwards within the next 2 years, because I thought, I really want to understand this. I really want to see what I missed, okay? And the point is you are right. The only way you'll ever find that out is if you allow yourself to feel deeply, whatever it is. And I agree with you. I don't agree with the others that say you always have to be happy.
Right.
I don't even think that's spiritual, to be honest. I think happiness is your ability to feel without censoring.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And there was I just read a really good meme on Facebook today about this very topic, and it said something about the whole idea of being spiritual is not to be in denial, but to embrace life. And one of my arguments, and I use the term argument in the sense of in this particular debate, is that I feel that being spiritual is to be fully human. And to be that, like you said, that God, man, goddess, woman person, but to be within that realm of celebrating humanity, of celebrating the ability of happiness, of sorrow, of joy, of anger, of feeling. I don't want to lose my humanity. Moving to the quote unquote of fifth dimensional reality, I don't want to leave my body. I don't want to not be able to enjoy a beautiful sunset or take a walk through the woods and smell the flowers and enjoy that, or to even feel the loss of a loved one I care for.
That's right.
We don't want to lose our humanity. We're embracing our humanity as spiritual beings.
That's right. And I think what you do find is that the more you allow that to be as it is, you do find that your reactions to things aren't nearly as chaotic as they would have been years ago.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah. So you do find a balance with that. But I agree with you. And, a lot of times, too, I don't know about you, but people will ask me, how did you get so psychic? And I said, I did it by uncovering, exploring my own belief systems and allowing myself to honestly take a look at what I was really thinking and believing. And that self-honesty, made me very sensitive. And then, of course, I did healing work and I did psychic surgery for 12 or 13 years. And, I learned compassion from that. But to me, all of that it's the ability to feel without censoring what you're feeling, because that's what people will do. They'll call and they'll say, oh, my God, I'm depressed. I've even had people, you'll laugh at this, Bernard, call me up and say, Aingeal, I know you're an angel, and I know you can fix me. Just make this go away.
That's very interesting. I just had an email like that.
I'm sure you do get it. Yeah.
That's something about removing a psychic implant from a trauma, and my answer was you have to work through it. You have to identify it and go to it, embrace it, and work through it.
Yeah, because I've had people too say, can you, I know about this past life that happened 300 years ago, and can you take it out of my Akashic Records?
Yeah, there's no delete. There's only moving forward. There's only moving forward and growth and growing to that next level. We can't live in denial. That's one of the things I relate to with some of this recovery talk. It's like you cannot be in denial. You have to be true to what you're feeling, what you're sensing. And if this information, I, as an activist, I consider myself a spiritual activist, and it's very difficult sometimes to wake up and see what a particular law was passed, or whether to see police brutality and all the stuff that went on in Ferguson. It's very heartbreaking.
It is.
But the reality of it is that now it's bubbling to the surface, and I see it as, what, I'm glad it's everywhere, because now people are seeing, and we will have the ability to choose not to live like this anymore. So once we're shown the negative, we now have the opportunity to say, I don't want to live in a country like this. I don't want to live in a city like this. I don't want to live in a world like this. So it's up to us to make that choice to live differently and to create a better reality for ourselves and for everybody else.
Yes. You know how you began the program today talking about the elections?
Yes.
Okay, well, first just did give us a little bit of a political thing the other day as well, and it was saying that, exactly what you just said now, more of us have to get out there and be active, be active in our government, be active, and if we don't like what we're seeing, we do have to take part and be part of the solution. And it just reflected what you were saying in terms of choosing, what kind of world do you want to live in? Are you unhappy with a law that was passed? And you've got to do something about it. So because as you witness, I'm sure you witness so many of these laws that are being passed here. I mean, they're just insanity. There's no other word for it.
It is. It's true. What someone say? I said that a lot of the government is psychopathic, and someone said no, they're sociopathic. They just don't care.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's certainly not humane. It's certainly not a result of a coherent mind. I'll tell you that right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're getting ready to come up on. Oh no, actually, we have another minute or so. But with that being said, let's get ready for our last break. I can't believe how quickly the show, of course, with Aingeal goes by very quickly. I really enjoy having you on the show. Again, I just want to remind everybody that on 11/11 next week, we are going to have Rupert Sheldrake and Matthew Fox on the show here with me live. Rupert's going to be in England. I'm not sure where Matthew Fox is. But they're going to be discussing the physics of angels, and it's very interesting. Again, Matthew Fox is a heretic who was kicked out of the Catholic Church, and Rupert Sheldrake was banned from TED Talks because of his idea that empirical science is too closed-minded. And that's going to be a great half hour with him. Definitely, I would love to talk to him more about the idea of how even science, we're talking about corruption. Even science is a good old boys club, and they won't look at something else if it doesn't fit their paradigm. They will be in denial that there is new information if it doesn't fit.
And now back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We're having a really great discussion today on the nature of reality, the Akashic guidance from Aingeal Rose. Aingeal, I'm looking through my notes on your book, and I'm aligning with one of them. Let me share a little, anecdote of my awakening process when I was a kid, and this has to do with one of the things I know that you talk about in your book. When I had a shamanic vision quest in my early 20s, like 24 or whatever, and this is what I was speaking of earlier. And it's funny because a lot of the things we talked about did happen to me. I had the whole, my life flashed before my eyes. I literally thought I was dying. The next thing I know, I'm surrounded by these light beings, and they're showing me the planet and the good of the planet, the bad of the planet, and giving me instructions on what I need to do when I come back. And then I got sucked into this golden light and whatnot. But for years, I thought of it as, okay, these are transdimensional entities, and they went as far as to say that I am an earth incarnation of one of these beings that I was communing with. And that's what my whole book is about, actually, the Book of One that was released back in February. But it wasn't until about 4 years ago that as I was writing the book again, the person who was helping me produce the book said to me, well, explain, in the book, you need to explain where you were when you saw these beings of light. And I said, well, it was like I was in a room or something. It was circular, and there was like this big thing in the middle, and they were looking down on the planet. She's like, you were in a craft. I was like, I was in a craft. It could have been a transdimensional UFO experience. So in your book, you do talk a bit about alien abduction versus dimensional shift and altered state of consciousness, and I don't know. I had all three, perhaps. I don't know. So can you maybe expound a little bit on this idea of maybe what I went through or what other people are going through? Is alien abduction a transdimensional gateway, or those of us who are going through vision quests? I know right now, as a matter of fact, we're going to be doing a show on the ayahuasca experience, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to go through the same thing I went through. And I wonder how this all ties in with what you mentioned and what you talk about in your book.
All right. Well, the questions that were being asked was there was a person in the class who was convinced that a UFO abduction experience was all in your mind. Okay, so the questions were kind of centered around that, and the source was saying no. When a person is abducted, and I don't know that I think your experience was an abduction, because I'm going to define abduction would be when you're taken against your will.
Okay.
By not so nice.
Right.
Okay. But, I was answering that question and saying that you literally are being taken to their place, okay, whether it's their ship or their dimension, they're taking you from this one to them, to theirs, okay? You're not, it's not in your mind. It's not something that's happening in your consciousness. They literally are taking your spirit body and sometimes your physically, because people do have missing time.
Yeah. And they come back with implants.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, but I think they can put implants in you whether you're there or here.
Yes,
to be honest. Okay,
yeah.
But anyway, so I do think that type of an abduction experience is you literally leaving our space-time continuum and going to theirs temporarily. And I think it's because they just have the whole anti-gravity thing down pat. They know where the portals are, the wormholes, or whatever you call it. They know how to shift dimensionally. So that's what I think is happening there.
Yeah.
With you, I wouldn't be surprised if you were also on a ship, but I get a feeling that you were with your galactic family.
Yeah. Yeah.
These do feel like familiar family to you, and I think they're just saying, come on, Bernard, let's go have a visit here. We need to talk to you, So, and I think it was very purposeful. I don't consider that an abduction because I think that was actually a type of activation, besides, right? So that feels like a positive experience to me. You could have been on board their ship, or you could have just been in an interdimensional space that, in spirit, where you're just looking down through a portal, to the earth. It could have been either one, from what I'm getting, okay? But I don't feel anything negative about it at all.
Oh, not at all. I wasn't negative at all. It was very positive. It was very scary. I will say when I left my body, I guess I could say that. I guess I could say that on my show. When I left my body, I literally floated above my house, and I could see myself literally floating up into the sky, and I thought I was dying.
Yeah,
I literally thought I was dying, and it was. But I will say, and I'm sure everybody goes through this, and they go through this type of experience. When I came back, I was like, "Oh man, I'm back!" It's like that was so beautiful.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's that. We love that feeling of weightlessness, don't we?
Yeah.
When you move in, it's so much more natural to feel yourself spiritually.
Absolutely, and that actually translates into my dream state because I love to fly. I can fly in my dreams, and I just will myself, and I fly, and I love to fly in my dreams. So I can relate to what you're saying. But
I had an experience kind of like yours, not exactly, but when I thought back on it, I thought, well, what really happened there?
Exactly.
Was I taken someplace? It seemed to be in a dream, though, but I had these two tall female beings were there, and I know I knew them. You know how you just think I know who these people are. They handed me this golden bowl, and it had some sort of gold and orange liquid in it, and they told me to drink it. And when I did, all of a sudden I was traveling through these underground tunnels under the earth, hyperspace. It felt like I was in a liquid silver train. It would take these 90-degree turns, and it ended up bringing me under the platform of the Great Pyramid. This is a long time ago, by the way. And when I got out, they said, wait here. So I get out of this train, quote unquote, and I'm underneath the base of the Great Pyramid, and I see these cities. I knew it was dark, but I knew there had been a huge city under there. Next thing you know, I'm in some overtone above the earth in a crystal city. They tell me that I'm, part of the Rainbow Bridge, and then I was going to be a healer. And after that, my whole life changed. After that, my X-ray vision turned on. I woke up, my hands were on fire. within a month, all of a sudden I was seeing all kinds of things around people. That's how I ended up being a psychic surgeon for 12 years. But that was an activation, and that was an activation by my own family. So my thing is where did they actually take me, and what made me travel through those tunnels? Of course, a lot of those tunnels have been discovered since then.
Yes, they have.
But I was definitely in some sort of hyperspace place, I'll tell you that. And it was from the liquid they gave me. I don't know what it was, but zoom, So, but, I have thought back and said, was that an alien abduction,
Yeah, exactly. So, again, it opens more questions for me, and it opens up more and more questions for me. And actually, one of those questions now relating to the discussion that we're having with Akashic Records, and I'm sure the answer is yes, or maybe not. I don't know. The Akashic Records, does that incorporate the galactic beings and galactic families? And can we tap into those here on Earth?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, in fact, when people often ask me their origin when they're in a private reading, and if they're off planet, or you can see their galactic family, you can see where they've originated from and what they've been doing before they came to Earth. So all of that's in there. Yeah, it doesn't limit. There's no limits to it. It's all the information. So, is that what you wanted to know?
Yeah. I'm sitting here again trying to wrap my head around it.
Yes. Because I think that's the thing is, I don't know. One of the benefits I've gotten from being in them is, you just expand in your own sense of, what's out there.
Absolutely. And actually, again, going back to one of the topics that are in your book, and I don't know how far you went into this particular topic, speaking of creation, and as we're speaking about this experience that I have, because now it's just very clear in my head, and I feel like I'm going through it again. When I went to that place again, beyond those light beings, I was in this golden ball of light, for lack of a better term, but it was everything. And I could see pieces of the light coming down to Earth, and I saw the light returning to the source. That's where I got the word source. I heard that word before I ever heard of Abraham Hicks, but and I called it one, which is where the term the Book of One came from. And I saw these pieces of light coming and returning. But it was strange because at one point I remember sticking my face against the rear end of it, so to speak. Like if this ball actually had like a solid circumference, I remember pushing myself back toward the beginning of it, like wondering, where did this come from? Mm-hmm. And then I saw like millions more of these. Like it just went on and on and on and on and on and on. And you talk about, how did creation begin in your book? And I'd love if you could share a little bit about that. Like, again, I just shared what my vision was, that it was just like, there's creations of creations of creations, even, it goes that big. So I'm wondering what they shared with you.
Yeah, I had an experience similar to that some years ago in Ireland, when I was asking that very question to Source on our way home from a class, and there was no end to it either. I mean, I felt like I'd go into this light, and after that there was another thing of light, another thing of light, and it's like, oh, forget it, I just can't get it again. Okay, but when we asked the question, it was a topic that we had when we asked Source about it, and it was experiential for me because I immediately felt this intense love, and I was moving what appeared to be through some sort of a tunnel. And the tunnel was reflective on both sides, I remember, and I remember thinking to myself, what is that reflective surface? I couldn't really get a handle on it. But I felt like I was moving deeper and deeper and deeper into intense love and desire. And it was overwhelming. I mean, I remember crying. I couldn't hold back the tears. Mm-hmm. But as I did, I came to light, and I kept moving into light. And I didn't necessarily see it as a sphere of golden light, but, you are aware of a presence. And so that's how I know there's a source, because it's a presence. And suddenly, as I kept walking through, it got brighter and brighter. The love and desire got more and more intense. And then all of a sudden I was in these billions of eyes. They were just eyes everywhere. Mm-hmm. And they were all the source. All of them were the source. It wasn't like they were separate sources. It was still all the one. It's almost like, the one and the many are the same thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But what Source was saying to me was that creation came out of love and desire. And even at one point, I think we asked, well, how did you begin? And it laughed uproariously and said, I exist because I am.
Mm-hmm.
You are. You're here, aren't you? So you exist. So it's kind of like that question doesn't ever get answered on how does Source get to exist. It just basically says, well, I exist.
Yeah.
I am. That's its name. In fact, I even remember asking one time, who am I speaking to? And it says, I am.
I am, yes.
So, but I think the important thing I got out of that, what it was trying to impart, is that creation is the result of love and desire. And, that was its intention. It still is its intention. It will always be its intention. And the experience of it is just something that I can't even describe as I was moving into it. And, before you called me today, I opened up the records and I was just I always do before a show, and I was just asking Source to, guide us and make sure it's good, for whoever needs it.
Yeah. And
all of a sudden it popped me this little piece of information about our bodies. Because you know how there's all this discussion about how your bodies got created,
Yeah.
And the Source basically says, you decide when you're in spirit. Bodies are created by thought and desire. Because you're a spirit and you're having a thought and desire that you want to have a body, it starts to create one for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such an empowering thing to say, because it basically said, it was saying it's always been up to you. Everything we go through, it's always been up to you. You create it through thought and desire, just like I created through thought and desire. You're not any different, And it was just such a profound feeling, because, I don't know, you probably hear it too, Bernard, as you get people that are here that say, well, there's no way that I decided to be here,
Oh, yeah, that's common.
This is not my planet. I don't belong here. Take me home,
Yeah, yeah.
But Source was saying, well, yeah, you did. You create a body out of your thought and desire. And it's like, wow, that means you can uncreate it too, you see. I mean, and that goes into a whole other conversation, really, about the inherent abilities that we actually do have. But going back to your question about creation, original creation is love, thought, and desire, and that's what it is.
Absolutely, and my brain is already churning. I'm like, all right, we need to have a metaphysical roundtable with me and Aingeal and a few other metaphysicians. This is really good stuff. Absolutely. You're right, because a lot of people do say, I say it all the time, the stranger in a strange land syndrome. What am I doing here? How did I choose to do? Why did I choose to do this? And I will say this, though, is I remember as a young man, let's say from like 15 to 30, I remember feeling that I wanted to experience everything. I wanted to experience love, joy. I wanted to bungee jump. I wanted to go to New York City and ride a subway. I wanted to ride every roller coaster. I wanted to experience multiple lovers. All these things I wanted to experience. And that was kind of like my motivation in my youth was, I want to experience this. And I did them. I did 99% of them. My bucket list was done by the time I had my spiritual awakening. But but I remember having that intense drive of, I love being a human being. I love feeling this. I love feeling love. I love feeling anger. I love feeling drugs or whatever it was, or the roller coaster, or being scared at a scary movie. I wanted to feel everything. So I can relate to that we do. I obviously chose to be here because I wanted to feel human.
Yeah, because what it actually said to me, I just found when I wrote it down. It said, you must have had the thought and desire of you to exist in a physical body. before, you have to be the creator. You've been orchestrating it all along. We have been in control of it all along. It's always been our decision. And I thought, wow, just like you said, too, with experiencing it, it's probably the reason that I love Anne of Green Gables so much. She was just everything was delicious,
Yes.
It was deliciously evil. It was deliciously romantic, She just had such an enthusiasm and a presence in anything that she went through, And I just love those movies because I thought, yeah, that's what it is, just delight in the whole drama,
Exactly, and that's exactly it. And I'm running out of time, but I'm ever so quickly I want to say, and I hear about let's say like you said, the people that what am I doing here, or the activist that's angry all the time. It's like, but you love being angry. You love being an angry activist. That's why you're here. You love being frustrated with the government. You love this. Embrace it. This is what you love to do.
I can tell you, if I have a minute real quick,
yeah.
I saw this bad car accident one time, when I was bringing my kids to school one day, and I saw this accident happen in front of me, and the car flipped over, and I knew the person in there was dead, I just knew it, because the spirit was above the car, and it was a man, and he goes, "Did you see what I did? Did you see how I took myself out? I'm going to be in the papers."
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Yep.
Yeah. How's that for a different perspective?
Yeah, we do it. We do it for sure. For sure. Anyway, Aingeal, I can't believe it. We're out of time already. This is so quickly. I must have you on sooner than a year and a half again.
But, that'd be great.
We're going to have to do a metaphysical topic talk or something. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on today.
And thank you so much.
Let's just remind everybody, the Nature of Reality, Akashic Guidance for Understanding Life and Its Purpose is available at, what is it, The Nature of Reality.
thenatureofreality.info.
Very, very good. That's fantastic. And I can't wait to get my copy. I'm sure it's somewhere in the post office.
Yes, there's, yeah.
It'll get here in a week or two, I'm sure. But
and
are you going to be appearing anywhere else anytime real quick? Coming up soon? Are you doing any classes, or where can people?
Well, we are next. We will have a schedule out pretty soon for 2015. We're in San Diego right now, so we will be creating some courses here, and but they're just not up yet, but they will be.
Okay.
So that's worldofempowerment.com.
At worldofempowerment.com. And people can find you there, and they can contact you if they want to book a session or anything with you, or... Yeah,
they'll be able to do that from there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I just want to remind everybody that we are going to be having Matthew Fox and Rupert Sheldrake joining us next week on 11/11 for the Physics of Angels. That's going to be very, very interesting. And as I mentioned, on December 2nd, I'm going to have Tracy James come. She is... I guess a shamanic tour guide, for lack of a better term, and she does do the ayahuasca experience in Peru. So if people are interested, but she's going to come on and talk to us about what the experience is like going down to the jungles, working with a shaman. If I'm not mistaken, it's like a 3 or 4 day ritual, and one day is for cleansing and whatnot. But we'll be speaking with her in early December. Have a wonderful week, everyone. We love you. Bye-bye.